Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, star major for entrepreneurs who want to unlock their potential, command any stage, and make blockbuster profits. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a brand that makes you happy and profitable. Here we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, founder of the Brand Star Academy, where I teach entrepreneurs how to be powerful, profitable speakers and create their own celebrity personal brands. Welcome to this episode of Thrive, How to Build Your Brand with Books, with my special guest, Dan Janal. Dan is the founder and CEO of PR Leads Expert Resource Network, where he helps experts and authors build their brands with books. Dan himself has written over 12 books, with his newest work called Write Your Book in a Flash. He's also a PR expert and has helped over 10,000 experts and authors expand their brand. He was a wealth of knowledge. You're not going to want to miss this episode. If you are thinking about writing a book, you are going to want to stay tuned. Dan shared his expert insight and answered questions like, what should be your first book? If you're an entrepreneur, you might have an idea or two or three or four ideas of a book that you'd like to write, but what should be the first book, the most important book that you write to expand your brand? And he answered the question, how long should your book be? Should it be 300 pages or 100 pages? What is important right now to get your book read by your ideal client? Then we dove into something that is really near and dear to my heart, and that is story, your brand story. We talked about why your brand story is so important and how to choose the right story for your brand. Not all stories are created equal. But Dan shared something that I hadn't heard so much about before, and he talked about the concept of bridging, of how to make the story that you do choose really work to show your value as an expert. So you're going to want to stay tuned to figure out what is that bridging and how can you use it to tell your brand story to drive sales. Then we shifted gears a little bit because Dan has been around the block. He is so experienced. He was a journalist. He went to Northwestern University for journalism, and he's won awards, and he's interviewed some big players during his career, one of which was the former First Lady, Barbara Bush. And we talked about that interview and how Barbara Bush really stayed on brand in the interview. So you're going to want to hear what he had to say about that. It was fascinating to hear about First Lady Barbara Bush. Also, if you are somebody who wants to write a book and you are just not thinking that it's for you to write down and sit down, Dan also talked about what you do if you're a busy professional and you don't have time and you don't want to sit down and write the book, how you can still get your book out the door and in the hands of your clients. It's a great interview. I was so happy to have Dan here. He came to the show at the beginning of his vacation in Boston, so it was an extra special treat that he carved out the time to do that. Also, if you are an entrepreneur and you want to be a star in your industry, and maybe you do want to write a book, but you're not sure about your expert positioning yet, and you want to create your groove in the marketplace and define your brand and create high-end packages to sell and maybe up-level your speaking or your signature talk, then I would love to talk to you about setting up a time to talk to me and having a Brand Star consult. You can go to my website to heatherpoduska.com/Brand Star consult to apply for consultation, where we will explore how to expand your brand footprint. Okay, on to the show. I hope you enjoy this episode of Thrive. Hi, I'm Heather Poduska, founder of the Brand Star Academy, where I teach entrepreneurs how to be powerful, profitable speakers and create their own celebrity personal brands. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You're in for high-value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. And I'm so excited to have my guest here today. Dan Janal is the founder and president of PR Leads Expert Resource Network, where he helps businesses build their brands with books. He himself has written more than a dozen books, including his newest work called Write Your Book in a Flash, which has already reached #1 best-selling status.
As a publicity and marketing expert, Dan has helped more than 10,000 authors and experts expand their brands and has handled PR assignments for major corporations such as IBM, Reader's Digest, American Express, and more than 100 other high-tech companies. He was even on the PR team that launched AOL and is considered one of the founding fathers of the internet. When Dan helps leaders and executives write their books, he helps them take their business to the next level and expand their influence. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Heather. It's a pleasure to meet you and to be with you and to help your readers and your listeners. So thank you.
Oh, well, thanks. That's quite a resume. Can you tell us and our listeners a little bit, how did you get that accomplished resume going? What is the story?
Oh, wow. Well, I was a poor kid growing up, and I was lucky enough to get to Northwestern University because I thought I was going to write the great American play, not the great American novel, but the great American play. And I saw all these people majoring in English, and I thought, well, they can dissect Moby Dick and Herman Melville, but they don't know about real life. So I majored in journalism. So I was a newspaper reporter in West Virginia and Florida and New York State. And then from New York, when I was in New York State, I interviewed a PR guy who had who had done the PR for just about every high-tech invention since World War II, and he offered me a job. So the next thing I knew, I was doing high-tech PR at the very dawn of the computer industry.
Wow.
So I was representing companies like Commodore and K-Pro. I introduced the CD-ROM encyclopedia, which was the first piece of software for the CD-ROM industry. Now you don't even have CD-ROMs anymore, so my time has come and gone. But you live, you learn, you grow, and I knew about the online world. So because of AOL and America Online, so I wrote the first book about marketing on the internet back in 1993. That's when Al Gore and I were like the only people online.
Wow.
And that led to speaking engagements literally all over the world, from Beijing to Budapest. I've written 13 books since then, and it really launched my career. So that's the first takeaway here. A book can launch your career. I wrote my first book in 1991. It was called How to Publicize High-Tech Products, and I spoke at the Software Publishers Association. And at the end of the talk, there would always be two people at the end of the room saying, "Can I talk to you? I want you to do PR for me." So the book made me stand out from everyone else doing PR. And for everyone listening to this show, everyone has competitors. Everyone, no matter how good you are, no matter how varied and how many resources you are, no matter how good you think you are, the universe lumps you all together because you all went to college, you all have degrees, you all have good clients and good experiences. So what sets you apart? You're an author, you have a book. That could be the one thing that makes you stand apart. So I believe that books help you build your brand, and they're a great publicity source, and it's a great way to get new business. And a book also helps you raise your fees because you're seen as the expert.
That's absolutely true. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs especially are like, I got to write my book. But they don't know what is the right book to write first. So what do you say about that? If you have more than one book idea, what is the book that you should start with if you're trying to use it for building your brand and your business?
You actually answered the question. You have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this book? If it's to release your inner angst and talk about your childhood difficulties and why you can't get along with your brother or your sister, that's not the book that's going to get you any business. If it's an encyclopedia book that tells everything you know about this certain industry, well, no one wants to read an encyclopedia anymore. A book has to be so short that people can pick it up when they get on the plane in New York and finish it by the time the plane lands in Los Angeles. People just don't have long attention spans anymore. You need to write a short book. But the focus of the book has to be on something that makes people, when they finish it and put it down, they say, I like him, I know him, I trust him, I want to do business with him. So you collect all of your stories, your ideas, and you go at it from a marketing point of view and say, what do my clients, my future clients, need that I can share with them that helps them get to know me better so they want to work with me?
So I have a question around that. You were saying don't write about, your dog that died and your high school sweetheart, but brand story is such an important part of building your brand. So how do you feel and think about including
narrative and brand story to build that rapport with your audience and still make it a valuable marketing tool?
Oh, the two are not mutually exclusive. I didn't want to hint about that.
Yeah.
I remember, and brand story is so important. I remember one time at the National Speakers Association, I was in a story creation workshop, and the leader of the group called on someone and said, tell me a story about your grandmother. And a guy stood up, he said, well, I really like my grandmother. He said, what do you like about your grandmother? Well, she made these cookies for me, and he told the story about how he walked into the room and he smelled these cookies and the aroma, and every time he smelled that cookies, it just reminded him of the grandmother. And the guy who led the seminar, his name was Lee, he said, so what's the point to that story? And the guy said, I don't know. I don't know if there is a point to the story. And Lee looked at a person and said, well, audience, what was the point of that story? And he said, oh, smells can trigger emotions. That's right. He said, what else is the purpose of that story? He said, oh, he really loves his grandmother and is a really family-oriented person. And he called on 4 or 5 other people, and they came up with 4 or 5 other lessons that they learned from that little simple story. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you want to talk about your dog, because the dog taught you about loyalty, and it's all about being loyal to your customers, mm-hmm. then you have a story that relates to your brand, that makes you more personable and gets your story out there and builds that know, like, and trust factor so they want to work with you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because I work with a lot of people on their story as well, and I went to a conference a couple years ago where people were telling their stories and it wasn't connected to their business. Like, mm-hmm. you can tell a story about your grandmother and their cookies, but unless you can connect that to the value that you bring to your audience, it's not the right story, in my opinion.
Yeah, so, that's true, but you'd be surprised at this technique we have in PR called bridging.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can talk about the cookies, and I relate it to customer loyalty.
Yes.
So I might have, like, that might be my superpower mm-hmm. in terms of saying, no, you really have a great story here.
Okay,
Don't
cool.
throw that away.
Yeah.
Let's see where we can go with this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have fun with it. But
mm-hmm.
if you want to talk a story about your dog and how he died and how sad it made you feel, you'd be surprised. In the online world, you get more feedback talking about your dog or your cat than you would about some new business process that you created. Mm-hmm. So people really want to have relationships with people they buy from these days. Mm-hmm. So the more personal you can be in telling your brand story, it just works. But if you can tie it in, if you can tie in the logic and the emotion, then you have that double play that just cements them to you, because we buy on emotion and we justify on logic. I'm not the first person to say that. It's been proven.
Well, I would believe you if you said it, because you have so many impressive credentials if you said that. But I have a question about that, because a lot of people in marketing say, tell your story online, be personal, tell the story about your dog. And I think a lot of people are out there doing that, but they're not converting from it. They're building a lot of likes, a lot of audience members, but they're not necessarily converting their ideal clients. They're not actually making money from their story, because they haven't bridged that. They haven't found that. So what would be an example of someone that they could use a tool when they're thinking, okay, I'm going to write my story? What would they maybe think about to bridge that gap to their audience that are buyers?
Well, ask your buyers what they need and what they want and what their biggest problems are. Mm-hmm. And that's what you bridge to. Mm. So I love my grandmother. Every time I think of my grandmother, I think of those cookies. I think of that warm smell and that inviting smell I had when I went into her kitchen. It's just like in fact, you open the front door, you can just smell that beautiful aroma of the cookies coming in. And isn't that the kind of feeling you want when your clients walk into your office and your supermarket or your bakery or your law firm? Don't you have to feel that they look around, they see this is trust, they see the diplomas on the wall, they can see that the appointments are very neat and orderly, that your receptionists are friendly and inviting, that you create this whole atmosphere that people just know the minute they walk in the door, just like you walked into the door with your grandmother, you had this warm, enveloping feeling. That's the kind of feeling we can bring to your office when you hire us to do your interior decorating, to do your painting, to do your remodeling, to do your employee training. Mm-hmm. So it can work to a lot of different things. That's the bridging.
Yeah,
so you find out, what do they need? What can you provide? Because that's what they really want. Mm-hmm. And the brand story is that emotional factor that makes it all come together.
So you need the bridge. The bridge is key. I love that.
Right. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself. You're saying how wonderful you are, and they're saying, well, that doesn't connect with me. The brand story makes the connection.
Or it's just a story. That's a nice story, but isn't necessarily driving your business in a certain way.
Exactly. So that's when I say when you write your book, you say to yourself, what is it that your clients need? Because the only reason they're going to buy your book is to solve a need. They're not going to buy your book because to help you out or to, of course, they have an extra $20 in their pocket. They're buying your book because they have a problem. They have problems with their accounting, with their hiring, with their employee engagement, with their raising their kids, whatever. And they say, this book can help me have happier, healthier kids. And I'm a psychologist and I can help you have happier, healthier kids. And I'm going to show you how. And here's my book with 10 steps. Then you have it made, and you weave in your stories, your brand stories, and examples. You know, a lot of times people get stuck with their books because they have their signature story, you know, the cookie story, the grandmother story. That's it. They say, now what do I do? I have 120 pages to fill. Well, I've created a mnemonic called describers, and they stand for things like descriptions, analogies, stories, cartoons, line drawings, diagrams, interviews with experts, quotations from experts like Einstein or Steve Jobs. And you put all of those things together, and describers maybe 10 or 12 different words. If you look at those 10 or 12 different words, you'll be able to finish out your chapter. So you could start with your brand story and your signature story. They're interchangeable terms. And then you can say, as Albert Einstein said, and here's some statistics from a research firm, and then you're telling a more complete story that works with them emotionally and logically, and you prove your point, so that way they get to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah, it adds texture to the book as well. I love
Exactly.
that. I love that.
Exactly.
So the name of your newest book is Write Your Book in a Flash, is that right?
Yeah, and I call it a paint by numbers system, because everyone likes a system, for writing the book of your dreams fast. And the reason I call it that is because when you remember, think back when you were a kid, you had this paint by numbers kit, and you weren't a great artist, but you could fill in the blanks. You know, here had this easel, this canvas with, you know, numbers, 3 is green, and 4 is dark green, and 5 is light green, and you were drawing a tree. You just stay in the lines, you were okay. I think writing a book is as simple as that, because every book should have, for example, 10 chapters. First chapter tells them what you're going to tell them. Last chapter tells them what you told them and tells them what they should do in the future, which is hire me. Or if it's an advocacy book, call your representatives, do these things, whatever. And the 8 chapters in the middle prove your points. So if you say, gee, that sounds pretty simple, why didn't I think of that? Well, I did. So, so I put it into a book. I've written 13 books. I figured out how to write books fast. And this is a way of writing books fast. Because if you have those 10 chapters outlined like that, and you say, this is doable. Because some people say, well, do you have 26 chapters? Do you have 42 chapters? Do you have... Now you have a framework, and inside each of those 10 chapters you have the describers. So you have your signature story, your brand story, and you follow up with those other describers that prove your point, and then you have your book written. And here's the other secret. You don't have to write it in order. So let's say, I'm really strong on chapter 3, but I have to write chapters 1 and 2 first. No. There are no rules like that. It's your book. You can do it whenever you feel like it. So if you have the excitement to say, I really want to write the chapter on employee engagements, then you write it now. Or if you're writing 2/3, they say, I'll get to that third part later because I have to get a case study and I have to get permission from someone to quote them or whatever. I need to find a diagram. Well, I can do that later. And some days you'll have a different feel. You will have biorhythms, high days, low days. No 2 days are the same. So you just go with the flow and say, I really feel inspired to write chapter 9, subsection 3, and be done with it. And I tell you, if you just write 15 minutes a day, you can have your book done in 3 or 4 months. It's as simple as that.
I think that's a really great point, because that is the biggest complaint I think people have is, I want to write this book, but I don't have the time. I don't have the time to do it, or I don't know how to start. I don't know how to organize my thoughts. So having that step-by-step process is really key.
Exactly, and you asked 2 questions there. Being organized is going to save you a ton of time. That's why I can confidently say in the title of my book, write your book fast. But also, when I do my webinars and my seminars, that is the number 1 question people ask is, I don't have the time to do this. Well, you make the time. All I want is 15 minutes a day. If you can't give me 15 minutes a day, then you're just not serious.
Right.
You can get up an hour earlier. You can stay up an hour later. And granted, people have kids, people have jobs, people commute, there's real life, people get sick. All that stuff happens.
Right.
But you can watch an hour less of television.
Right.
You can take 45 minutes for lunch instead of an hour for lunch, and you write for 15 minutes. You get 500 words down there, and you've answered Chapter 9, subsection 3, it only needed 500 words, you're done.
Right.
And the next day, you're filling out another section, you go back to that paint by numbers picture, and you've just filled in all the clouds.
Yeah.
And to the next week, you're going to fill in the trees, and then you're going for the ground, and then you're going to do the house.
Right.
And it all gets done. Doesn't matter what order it gets done in, but it gets done because you have the outline to get it done.
Yeah, and I wrote a book in January, and I had been contributing author for other books, but this was sort of my first thought leadership book, and I got an accountability partner, and we set a deadline. So we met every week. We said, okay, this is what we're going to accomplish this week, and checked in, and I did it in a month.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. But I wouldn't have probably finished that had I not had that accountability and a deadline. So, you're checking in with somebody each time to say, did you write your chapters? But I agree. I have 3 kids. I have a business. I have a house. You just have to carve out the time and prioritize it.
Yeah. If it's important to you, you will do it.
Right.
There's a business coach that I know, Christian Michelson. He says, I have all the time in the world to do all the things that are truly important to me. And if you think about it, this is the greatest time management sentence ever, because you're only doing the things that are truly important to you, even if you're sloughing off and drinking coffee and reading a book or manicuring your nails. That's what's most important to you at that moment, even if you're procrastinating because you're not writing your book or shopping or writing or doing whatever else. That is we always default to what is most important to us. We just have to say, writing a book is really, really important to me, and I'm going to do it. And if you can't get to that point, then you shouldn't be writing a book yourself. You could be hiring a ghostwriter to write the book for you, which is perfectly done. And frankly, the biggest, darkest secret among many books that are written by thought leaders, and I say written by thought leaders, they're not written by thought leaders. They're written by ghost writers. Sometimes they get credit on the cover. No, there's nothing wrong with this. If you're a business executive or a coach or a speaker and you're traveling and you don't have time to write the book, if you have 3 kids but you have these great ideas and you don't have time, or you're closing these $1 million deals, selling real estate or insurance policies or hedge funds or whatever, hire someone who can do it for you, because your time is more valuable. There are people who can write and can't do much else, and that's what they are gifted at, and you're great at putting together hedge funds. That's what you should be doing. So there's no shame in that. You hire people to do all sorts of things for you. Why not hire them to write a book for you? Another way people can write books that they don't realize is they might be creating a lot of intellectual property right now. They might be blogging every week. You can take those blogs and put them into a book. Maybe edit them a little bit. That's a perfectly fine way to write a book. You might have spoken, so you have transcripts, you have PowerPoint presentations. You can put those into a book. I mean, there are books that are really just 50 or 100 pages long. In fact, I brought one with me today. I was at a conference in Boston recently. This is a book by the world's leading speaker on customer service. This guy is fantastic, Chip Bell. And he gave his book out to everyone for free. And I looked at this book and I said, it's kind of small. And then I looked at it sideways and I said, it's kind of thin. And it doesn't have many pages, but the pages in it are full of gold. And I believe that you could write a book like this in a weekend, not even 15 minutes a day, just a couple of hours. These are probably all of his signature stories, those brand stories that are cute and interesting and inspiring. And this is probably written for the line people, the people who are going to provide the customer service. Now, would the CEO look at this and say, is this guy a thought leader? No, they want the 300-page book. They want the research. They want the background. But the people who are at the front lines of the Hilton hotels and the Wendy's hamburgers and places like that, they're going to look at a book like this and say, sprinkles? That's kind of fun. And then they look and they see bright colors and a sentence on 2 pages here. 3 sentences. This is accessible to people today, especially with today's short attention span, where we're on Twitter and Facebook, and you can say a lot in 128 characters. It's amazing how much you can say in 128 characters, and that has trained our minds to say that I don't want to read a 400-page book anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because someone when I was writing my book said, stop calling it an ebook, because I'm getting both. I'm doing both. But another person said, ebook is really the way that most books are going for the future. And there's something about like Amazon Library. I don't quite understand all that stuff, but do you have any thoughts about that? Is the ebook the way of the future? I mean, I'm never probably going to give up. I'm old school, to hold something in
Yeah.
my hand. But I think people do have that misconception that it's daunting to write, a 200, 300, 400 page book when you don't really need to. You can write that small book.
Yeah, no one wants to read an encyclopedia anymore from cover to cover. They want to find the information that helps them, and they're in, they're out, they're gone. So yeah, I think as the future goes, we're going to see smaller and smaller books. In fact, I asked Chip Bell, is this the future? And he said, it most definitely is. So self-publishing is the future. You can write a book on your word processor, save it as a PDF file, upload it to Amazon. I'm simplifying it a little bit, but it really is that simple. There's services called CreateSpace that will look at your book through a computer and say, oh, this page margin is off, fix this up. But once it's done, it converts it to a file that can be read on any Kindle or iPad. And you're in business. And I've seen ebooks that are 27 pages. And it's like, really? But they were like $2.99, so I didn't feel ripped off. And they presented enough information that made me know, like, and trust the author to say, she really knows what she's talking about. I got a lot of value out of this. So that is good. So that's one way to answer the questions. There's nothing wrong with an ebook. Here's the second way to answer a question. Your book in printed form is the best business card you will ever have, because it automatically says that you are an expert. And the other thing is, people don't throw away books. So the CEO or executive or the prospect you gave the book to, she's not going to throw it away. She's going to put it on her bookcase, and your name is going to be staring out at her every day.
And maybe your picture too.
If it's thick enough, yes, you want to put your picture there, which is another tip. You want to have your book be a certain width so your picture and your name stand out. And when she's ready to hire you, and it may be this month, it may be next month, it may be 3 years from now. We don't know when they're ready to hire us, but it's our job to be in touch with them so that when they are ready, they do buy from us. And having that book on their bookshelf makes it a silent salesperson. So yes, you can have the book as an ebook. You can also turn it into a print book, either paperback or hardcover, and then you have your silent salesperson.
That's amazing. And so you've worked with a lot of high-end executives and thought leaders, but you've also rubbed shoulders with some other pretty impressive people along your path. You were in the trenches with Al Gore and the development of the internet, but I read that you also interviewed some pretty high-level people when you were doing journalism.
Yeah, I interviewed Gerald Ford and First Lady Barbara Bush, who unfortunately just died the other day. And it was really quite something. She, being this close, actually closer to her than I am to you right now, she was speaking at the Indian River County Women's Republican Club. I was a reporter down there. I was in Florida, the Vero Beach area. And here's a funny story, actually. It would have been so easy to say, here's what George Bush thinks about all these topics. And anyone could have written that story. You could read just to get his position papers. And I didn't want to do that. I figured, I have the candidate's wife here. And George Bush was not president then. He was, there was no inkling that he had any inside lane on it than anyone else. So I thought, it would be kind of fun to do a story about the candidate's wife. They're on the road, they don't get much attention, it's always on the husband, it's a man's game. I feel like, what's it like to be the woman behind the man and, having to live in the same hotel rooms and the same rotten schedule and whatever. So I'd say, so what do you think about topic A? And she would say, well, George thinks, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, what do you think about this topic? And she said, well, George thinks, and no matter what I asked her, she always came back to, well, George thinks. I feel like she is right on point. So I tried to, I don't say trip her up. I'd like, how can I get this personal? I said, well, what do you like to do personally? I'd be like, great, now I can get, she likes to bake cookies, or she likes to be with her grandchildren, or she likes whatever. She answered, well, George and I like to jog.
Wow.
So she was totally on point and totally focused, and the rest is history. Wow. So she could really tell a story, and that brand story, it was all about George and all of his positions, and it worked.
Wow. And I'm sure in her personal life, obviously, it was she was very dedicated to her family, and the people that were around them in the White House always had stellar things to say about her. But it was very savvy for the campaign to have that brand message be consistent over and over and over again. Yeah.
And that's something else that's important for everyone listening to this podcast. It's like when you talk to a reporter or or a prospect really, you should have 3 things that you want to say. And you know that whatever they ask, you're going to come back to those 3 things, because those 3 things will help them know, like, and trust you, so they want to do business with you. See how I keep on coming back to that know, like, and trust? I'm also obnoxious about it. I have to stop that. But you'd really be doing yourself a disservice if you left that interview, whether it be with a prospect or a reporter, and you didn't get your 3 points across. Now, it's up to them to accept them, to listen to them, to agree with them or not. But if you don't get your 3 points across, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because those are the 3 things that separate you from everyone else.
Have you gotten your 3 points out yet?
Yeah, it's easy to write a book.
Okay.
You can do it.
Yeah.
And a book will help you build your brand so you can charge higher prices because they know, like, and trust you.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. And if people want to find out more about you, about your books, about your system for writing books, how can they get in touch with you or find you online, since I'm sure you're on the internet?
Sure. My website is the name of the book, Write Your Book in a Flash. You can go there and learn more about me and my writing services, my book coaching services, developmental editing, and ghostwriting, or you can go directly to Amazon and get the book. It's cheap.
It's valuable. It's valuable.
It's at a very low price. You're right, it's not cheap. Thank you for the correction. We can all learn. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing all this incredible expertise. I mean, if someone is out there and they want to build their brand, if they want to be seen as the thought leader, if they want to attract higher paying clients, get your book done, baby, right? I mean, that's the whole ticket.
Or get someone to help you get your book done.
There you go. Yeah. Because I'm a brand strategist. I'm always saying lead with your superpowers. And if writing isn't your superpower, hire Dan.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One last question. I always ask.
Here comes the zinger.
Here, it's not too bad. What does it mean to you to thrive?
Thriving to me means the fact that this winter I skied 33 days.
Whoa.
I got up in the morning. I went to my yoga class. I did 2 hours of work, answering emails, dealing with clients, whatever. Then drove half an hour to Buck Hill, which is our local little ski area where Lindsey Vaughn learned how to ski. Ski for an hour or 2. Check my email there. If anything is important, I rush back to the office. If not, I go down for a few more runs. Then I go back to the office in the afternoon, finish up client work, finish up any kind of emails, read a little bit, and then I'm done with my day. So thriving means that you control your day and your life. That's why we're in business, to run the life that we want to live, not to live by someone else's rules.
I love it. That's a fantastic definition. Whether you ski or not, to live the life that you want to live.
Right.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm so glad we met.
Yeah, me too. And also thank you to all of you for joining us as well. And until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, it's Heather again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Thrive. Every week we try to bring you people and information to help you change your life for the better, to grow your business, to expand your thinking, and to open your heart. If you did enjoy this content, I would so appreciate it if you would go to iTunes and review us. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. And if you found this information helpful or useful in any way, please share it on out. Let your friends and family know about Thrive. And finally, if you'd like to know more about me, you can visit me at heatherpoduska.com. Until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes.